Now it's time for Lefties Losing It. Coming up, a Joe Biden extravaganza. You won't want to miss this one. We've gone deep into the archives to dig up the best of old Gaffy Joe as he finally finishes up as president. But first, cue the inauguration lefty meltdowns because Donald Trump is back, baby. Yes, some of those were even from the first inauguration, but this time round, it's music to my ears. The screams really warm my heart because we love to see it, don't we? It's over for the woke lefties who are just so desperately trying to stay relevant in this new era of optimism. Cue the Karens, please.
I would rather wear underwear full of angry bees than watch the inauguration on Monday.
And of course, when all else fails, make a public service announcement.
I don't know about you, but I will not be watching the inauguration. Not during the inauguration, not after the inauguration, not any part of it on the news. Who's with me?
Oh my God, please stop everything. If Karen wasn't watching, isn't going to watch, Trump should have definitely cancelled that inauguration. That's a huge blow for number 47. He will be absolutely devastated. I mean, what will these lefties do for the next 4 years?
A lying felon and adjudicated rapist is going to be taking an oath on the Bible. And you wonder why the world is laughing at us?
And look, please spare a thought for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is just not okay.
All these journalists are like, Congresswoman, are you going to the inauguration? Congresswoman, are you going to the inauguration? Are you going to the inauguration? Let me make myself clear. I don't celebrate rapists. So no, I'm not going to the inauguration tomorrow.
Oh, so sad. Again, what will Donald Trump do without you? Now to Don Lemon, the sacked CNN host, who is continuing on a slippery slope into the never never. I mean, the poor guy is absolutely grasping at every straw possible.
Here's the breaking news for you. Remember, people were upset that Joe Biden pardoned his son, Hunter Biden? Well, Joe Biden, President Biden, pardons his family on last day in office. Why is he doing that? Is it unprecedented? Yeah, it is unusual, but it's also because of the unprecedented, unusual administration that we have coming in, and he cannot trust his family in the hands of Donald Trump's Justice Department.
Yes, Don. Now, is this the same preemptive pardons that the Democrats warned Trump against for years?
Have you ever heard of somebody getting a preemptive pardon who was innocent of all crime? Who's just an innocent person? Have you ever heard of that? Just somebody getting a blanket pardon and they're an innocent person?
But no, it's the president's own family. It's people that have been covering up for the president in addition to his own family.
If he pardons people preemptively, he's essentially telling the public that these people have committed crimes. And we may not be aware of what they are, but the pardon is clear evidence that crimes have been committed.
The idea of a kind of prospective pardon, this sort of permanent federal get-out-of-jail-free card, that seems to be what we're talking about in the case of this, right, with Giuliani and his 3 eldest children who, as far as we know, have not been convicted of a crime. Maybe they've committed a lot, and they don't want to face action. I don't know. It's weird. I wouldn't ask for a pardon. I don't think I deserve one because I don't think I've done anything criminal. But, like, where does that come from, that concept that you can just kind of wave your magic pardon wand?
They never learn, do they? And has anyone seen Don Lemon? Donnie, your thoughts on that, please?
Ask anyone who knows me. They'll tell you. I don't believe in belittling people, belittling anyone.
Yes, that's exactly what I thought, Donnie. Now to the moment you've all been waiting for, the Joe Biden gaffe reel, and what a spectacle we have for you. Here is the now former leader of the free world, who we were told was healthy, thriving, sharp as a tack, and rigorous, when really he was a potato this whole time, being propped up by stage mum Jill Biden. Please cue the tape.
the total initiative relative to what we can do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be Vice President, but I think she was not qualified to be President. And now I want to hand it over to the President of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. Imagine what we can do next. 4 more years. Pause. Me. No one's saying that. No poll says that.
Look, it brings a tear to my eyes, doesn't it? It really, it's a somber moment. It's a real sad moment. I mean, what are we going to do without him? Bye-bye, Joe. Joining me now is Sky News contributor Kosha Garda. Kosha, great to see you. Thank you so much. Look, it's been a huge day, hasn't it? A very historic day, not just for the United States, but for the whole world. There's a lot to get through. But firstly, I want to start on this because Donald Trump has signed pardons for around 1,500 participants in the January 6, 2021 riot at the US Capitol. Kosha, he was always going to do that. Are you surprised, though, that this was his first port of call?
This was definitely a key signature issue. Expectations among his base were very, very high. There was a little bit of a question mark. There were some reports coming out there that maybe he won't do all of them, maybe it won't be a blanket pardon, possibly. And there was a little bit of a civil war going on within his base about that. But he delivered to them. And I think on the heels of what Biden did today, which is the other big story of all those pardons preemptively to controversial figures and his family members, he just really paved the way for this. I think it's all 1,500. There's 6 people where he's commuted their sentences and they might eventually result in a pardon. But all in, this is a full cleansing of what pretty much most of the country sees as an over-prosecution of Americans who've been in there for 4 years with a punishment that far outpaced the crimes committed.
Absolutely, and I think that there will be a lot of supporters celebrating this decision. But yeah, interesting, it was one of his first orders. But speaking of, Donald Trump has signed more than 200 executive orders on his first day. I've got to say, Kosha, he really wasted no time because you look at the footage. He went from the inauguration to the actual celebrations themselves, and then suddenly he was ushered into an office where the cameras were on him as he was signing one executive order after another. What are some of the key items on that list?
And, it's unlike anything I've ever seen, at least in the past several presidents. It's because 6 months leading up to this, he already had privately funded his transition team, and all of these ducks were in a row, ready to go legally and everything else on his desk. It spans the gamut, the pardons, like we just talked about, hiring freezes for the federal government, forcing people to come back into work physically in the office 5 days a week post-COVID, declaring a national emergency at the border, which is going to unlock a whole host of other things that come out of that on his immigration issue, withdrawing from certain international agreements, withdrawing from the World Health Organization, which many people are angry about post-COVID, and there's another 15 that I'm not even mentioning.
No, that's fair enough. I do want to go through some of the more international ones soon, but it feels like he's really trying to clean up the public service with these executive orders. Why do you think that is a priority for Donald Trump?
That's one thing where with the swipe of a pen, he can do it because that is where the executive branch has jurisdiction, that's in his purview, and a lot of it is just enforcing laws that are on the books or trying to shrink the bloat of government. All the Doge cutting and all of that will fall into that as well. Some of them he's testing the limit of the law by design. For example, ending birthright citizenship, which I think no country, maybe one other country has this. Ending birthright citizenship for illegal aliens, for example. You come in illegally, you have a baby, you don't automatically get U.S. citizenship. That will be tested in the courts, and he knows that. So some are in that category, but a lot of the other ones, to your point, is just it falls in his purview. He's not wasting any time, and anything where he doesn't have to rely on Congress, doesn't have to rely on the judiciary, he's just going full speed.
He's absolutely going full speed. And what do you think that this says about the sort of president that he will be, that he's not mucking around? And a lot of them, he made promises before the election. He won on that mandate. He's getting straight down to business. What do you think the next 4 years will be like?
If today is any indication, and let's hope he doesn't lose steam, we really are going to see huge change and huge disruption. This was such a high contrast election in every which way, in terms of policy, in terms of substance, in terms of style, in terms of energy, in terms of stamina, all of it. And today is just finally the fruits of that labor of what was a very hard-fought campaign is coming to light. And if this is an indication of what's to come, it's not going to be anything like the first time because he's much more organized. And it's also much more prepared. A lot of the attacks from the other side have fizzled out, so that it's hard for them to rerun those attacks. And you'd have to think that somebody who's been impeached, indicted, convicted, almost assassinated, is a changed human being, has nothing to lose, and he's just going to leave everything out on the field for the country.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting 4 years ahead. If today is anything to go by, boy, we're in for a fascinating ride. Now, we mentioned some of the international executive orders, and I found this one to be particularly interesting because Donald Trump has announced he is pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord. This is what he said.
I'm immediately withdrawing from the unfair, one-sided Paris Climate Accord ripoff. The United States will not sabotage our own industries while China pollutes with impunity.
Kosha, I want to get to the consequences for Australia in a moment, but firstly, Donald Trump's been professing the new green scam, as he's been calling renewable energy for the last few years. So this doesn't come as a surprise. But what does it mean now for climate targets that were put in place by the Biden administration?
It dismantles them. This whole Paris Climate Accord has been a yo-yo, where Obama signed them in. As soon as Trump won the first time, he withdrew. There was sort of an expiration period where he couldn't do it overnight, had to let it run its course. Finally withdrew, lost the election. Biden comes in, reinstates it, and now back to removing it. So each time that yo-yo sort of has been going back and forth. But I think, as he said there, that it runs antithetical to his agenda, which is U.S. energy dominance, growing industry at home, and these types of agreements. Even if you support wanting to keep the planet clean, which I think most people do, these agreements don't get there. It's just a massive transfer of power and transfer of wealth from some nations to others, some sectors to others, and it means in time, when this stuff is unwound, it will cease to exist.
Well, hopefully this is a big wake-up call for here in Australia with our renewable energy fantasy that we're going down under. But what does pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord now mean for Australia? Because it had been foreshadowed for some time. Mm-hmm. Does it impact us at all?
Hopefully it gives a little bit of a permission structure to push harder, because it's been a mini yo-yo here too, where Prime Minister Abbott, I think, signed on to it, and then he actually wanted to withdraw from it once the details came out, and then couldn't politically, and all the rest of it. So maybe we've got our own election coming up over here. This might pave the way for that type of discussion. Also, just specifically that transfer of wealth and power that we mentioned, the United States taxpayer funds a lot of projects that other countries are beneficiaries of through this accord, and if we pull out, if the US pulls out, then that funding dries up, and that may have some ripple effect to other countries, including Australia.
Well, I just find it fascinating that he's putting America first, which is exactly what he promised to do, and I hope that sets a standard for places like Australia first. Put your own country first and stop relying overseas. Now, let's move on, because one of the other things that was quite notable was the big tech titans who were on full display at the inauguration. You had Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Sundar Pichai and Tim Cook. They all hung out together, and apparently it was by choice. They looked very chummy in a number of the photos. But I read that the combined net wealth of the billionaires who attended the event was $1.2 trillion US dollars, Kosha, which is absolutely phenomenal. Now, some of these tech giants we know in the past, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, they they have criticised Donald Trump, but now it seems the tide has turned. They're all suddenly kissing the ring. Why do you think it's important in particular, not just for billionaires, but for the technology world to be in with Donald Trump as opposed to out?
This is a big story from this election. The tide has turned because Trump turned it. They sort of came kicking and screaming because decidedly over the past, I would say 3 or 4 decades, even well before Trump, Silicon Valley has been very favorable to the left in cash and kind. If you look at their donations, if you look at the issue set that they lobby for, it's not always in line with the America First or sort of the populist mantra. And in kind, all the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story or of COVID origin theories and all of that helped one side much, much more than the other. So it's really interesting from that to this, where they're kissing the ring and donating to his inauguration fund and looking all chummy. I think some of it might be self-preservation or expediency on their part, which is fine. You don't have to like each other, but if you've got common cause for the goal of America First, wonderful. And some of it might be that they just know that this is where the power is now, and it's in their interest to get on board, because if not, they'll be left behind.
But also, what does it say about Donald Trump as a businessman? Because, you know, it would be easy just to snub these people who have been quite rude to him in public forums for many years, but he knows how to foster relationships.
He really does, which is so funny given just the caricature that most of the world's media put on him and painted him as. He's actually very good at, he will counterpunch. We all know that. He's coarse in his style, but he is actually very good at letting bygones be bygones when it's time to forge a new alliance. You could see that with all sorts of people, from Megyn Kelly, as an example, a journalist, to these tech folks over here, and everyone in between. If there's common ground to be found for his vision of America First, he will do a deal.
He will do it, yeah, which is a good president. That's a good leader in my opinion, a very good leader. Now, President Trump also vowed to be the first commander-in-chief to put US astronauts on Mars. This is what he said.
And we will pursue our manifest destiny into the stars, launching American astronauts to plant the stars and stripes on the planet Mars.
But I got to say, I really liked this. This response from Elon Musk says it all. Oh, he's very happy. Elon Musk is stoked. But, you know, look, the space race is interesting at the moment, Kosha, because you've got countries worldwide, China, Russia, everybody is competing in that sphere now. What role does the US play?
Such a central question. So it's been 56 years since America decidedly took the mantle there and sent the first man on the moon. Nobody else has done it since then. And you could argue that era was the peak of US exceptionalism and ingenuity, and it all sort of manifests in that moment of Neil Armstrong going on there and having a phone call with Richard Nixon. And since then, the last half century, it's been a managed decline in so many aspects, US society, economically, culturally, and everything else. So Trump clearly has a vision. All these things he's talking about in terms of economics, culture, regulations, foreign policy, all of that, America First, make it strong. And then the manifestation of that, the pinnacle of it, is going back and winning the space race and out-competing other countries that have come a long way, like China, since then. That's his mission. That's something that Elon Musk has said is a big motivation for him. So that's that common cause that we talked about.
No, I think it's terrific. It's going to be interesting. Plus, it's a huge industry, the space industry. So I look forward to see what happens there. Now, Vivek Ramaswamy has pulled the pin as co-leader of the Department of Government Efficiency, apparently due to his interest in running for governor of Ohio. Kosha, I was quite surprised by this. It didn't take very long. It was picked by Donald Trump, but now he's left.
It always probably was a conceptual thing, having two leaders, co-CEOs, two billionaires.
With Elon Musk.
With Elon Musk, and Vivek. Nice idea, but I always thought maybe, I'm not sure, too many cooks in the kitchen, one could argue. But I think the more important reason is the governorship. So he's from Ohio. The governor there, Mark Devine, is term limited. So in 2026, that's going to be an open seat. Vivek kind of came out of nowhere and just in 15 minutes really went from a nobody to a household name now in America. So strike while the iron's hot. And if he does win, then that's a good thing, because he is, generally speaking, America First and an ally of Trump, and we need more governors Trump needs more governors that support his agenda.
Absolutely. Yeah, it didn't last very long at all. Now, we have to talk about Barron Trump, the son, of course, of Melania and Donald Trump, who has once again stolen the show at the inauguration. The internet is abuzz talking about how tall and stature this man is and say that he is a president in waiting. I tend to agree, Kosha. We know that he played quite a pivotal part in his father's election campaign. He was the one who encouraged him to go on podcasts like Joe Rogan, which really helped him get over the line. But you just look at him, he's so staunch, he's a strong man, and I think he's going to be a future leader. What do you think?
He's got a lot of the raw ingredients. So people love the Trump kids and the Trump family. They're also well put together, they're very attractive, they're smart, they're accomplished, all of that. And he was just a little 10-year-old boy the last time around, and they've sort of been keeping him out of the limelight, very private people, Melania famously. And now he's back thrust onto the scene, so tall. I think he's 6'7".
Yeah.
He's completely grown up in front of our eyes. And as you mentioned, he played a pivotal role in his media strategy. He seems to love the crowd and the energy. But like his mother, he doesn't say much. He's a little bit of an enigma. And I think that will serve him well, where he's creating a lot of interest and he may burst out onto the scene at some point in the future.
I completely agree. All eyes on Barron. I just think he's an absolute star. Now, speaking of his mother, we've got to talk about the fashion because Melania looked very sharp today, but her hat got in the way of an important photo opportunity. Have a look. Well, you can't help it. You know, Trump gave it a go. But meanwhile, Jeffrey Bezos' fiance's outfit was a little lingerie number. It's raised some eyebrows. And I've got to say, it looked like it raised Mark Zuckerberg's eyebrows too. We've got some vision there. He couldn't keep his eyes off her as well. But look, firstly, Melania, I thought looked lovely. Not sure about this outfit. What do you think?
Agree. I call Melania's outfit high fashion warpath because there's a message she's sending. It's like, you know, this is my space. It's like an armor. Don't mess with me. And the fashion industry very openly snubbed her the first time around. She objectively is the most gorgeous first lady, and they said they wouldn't dress her, never put her on the cover of magazines, as she'd already been on them previously, etc.
Exactly.
And Jeff Bezos' fiance, I think she probably should have chosen something different.
Questionable. It's questionable, Kosha. It certainly is. Well, it's been wonderful to speak with you. Thanks for joining me to unpack what's been a historic day in the US. Appreciate your time, Kosha Garda. Thank you.